Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm April Dipollina, and I am here today. I work for the Connecticut Family Support Network, and I am here with Jona Jeffcoat, who is a board-certified music therapist and director of services at Infinity Music Therapy. And
let's back that all the way up because it's Jona and Infinity.
that's changed?
No, it's Jona. You go back and forth between Jona and Jona, and it's Infinity.
Oh, it's Jona. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Jona, and it's Infinity Music Therapy Services.
Got it.
Okay. So now that I've gone through all that, I'm going to let Jona take it from here and just tell us a little bit about yourself, Jona.
Hi, guys. So like April said, Jona Jeffcoat, I am the Director of Services for Infinity, which was founded about 10 years ago. So we've been rocking and rolling across the entire state in home schools and facilities, working with children and adults with developmental disabilities, mental health disorders, neurologic needs, and just about everything else you can think of under the sun, using music as our modality. So I am a board certified music therapist. Goodness gracious, I've been here for a while now. I'm in my third cycle of being board certified. And I have my degree in music therapy with a second major in psychology from Charleston Southern University, which is in South Carolina. Did an internship in Fulton County, which is right outside of Atlanta, working with children ages 3 through 21, and got my board certification in 2007 and started Infinity in 2010. So we have been working across the entire state, and we're excited to be able to work with the Family Support Network and bringing music to these kiddos with a lot of different disabilities.
And I met Jona. Oh, let's see. We've been going about a year and a half, working with a play group that I have at Camp Harkness. Jona comes and, oh my gosh, she just does wonderful, wonderful stuff.
Oh, thank you. The kids are fun.
You know, I'm going to let her explain it, but first I thought you just tell us a little bit what music therapy is.
Sure. So music therapy is a data-based allied health profession that uses music and music-based interventions to target non-musical needs. So like a huge mouthful. So in a nutshell, music therapists are trained in how our brains and our bodies process music, as well as human development. So early childhood all the way through older adults, and how our bodies use music to reach developmental milestones, communicate, process emotions, and all that good stuff. So we as music therapists are clinically trained in minimum the therapeutic use of guitar, voice, and piano. And we go into sessions and we're actively making music with our clients to work on non-music skills like communication, socialization, motor development, emotional literacy, all these like different needs across the realm. But we're doing that with our clients who may not necessarily know how to play an instrument, who may not necessarily sing, and who don't need to read music at all.
And that's what I've seen Jona working with, our kids that are just a mixed bag. Some of them are verbal, some of them are nonverbal, some of them can participate fully and play instruments. Other kids just stand there. But there's something when Jona starts that just, if it's the twinkle in their eye or whatever, they're engaged differently. So that brings me to my next question is, what are the benefits and the reason for music therapy, especially with kids with special needs?
Sure. So there's a host of different benefits, but the bigger global reason of why music works is it's the only sensory modality that processes on both hemispheres of the brain. So if your speech center isn't working up to capacity or your motor skills are delayed, it really doesn't make a difference because music is processed everywhere in the brain, and music taps into our memory. That's why it's so easy to remember our ABCs by singing it to the tune of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Music taps into our motor cortex. That's why we get up and move and why our bodies can entrain to music. It taps into our speech center. That's why, you know, when we're using music to work on speech, we use the ebb and flow and how the notes go up and down to structure speech. So there's this whole brain process is why it's so effective. And music is also tied so strongly into our developmental milestones. So when you look at babies who are starting to slide on their notes and we're going, oh, that's so cute. They're going, woo, and up and down. That's music development, guys. So our brains and our bodies start processing music while we're still in the womb. And as a result, the proper use of music can have benefits like improving expressive and receptive language skills, organizing motor skills. So that's you can do your fine motor. We can use instruments like castanets to build some of those finger muscles, or we can organize music to work in andante, so walking patterns to reinforce appropriate gait. If you think about, if you get into the car and you have like those boo-hoo music tunes you want to crank, or your party songs, think about that, how that taps into your emotional processing skills, and how we have certain songs that are our go-tos because it helps us put music and words to things that we can't express verbally. So when we're working with our kids and our adults with different needs, it provides this nonverbal emotional outlet that some of them really need.
You hit on so many things there, and I'm just going to use the example of my own daughter, who at age, well, let's see, we started therapies with her at 6 months, and we weren't sure why. We weren't sure. I didn't know all of what you just said, but I know that we traveled, and of course, she's 32, so at that, we didn't have iPods and that. We traveled with a tape deck. We were never without music, and no one could really explain that to me so I could understand it or understand why we were doing this, but I know it worked. And I remember working with a physical therapist at the time, and my daughter was getting really agitated, and she was about 1 year old, and I said, just put the music on. And she kind of looked at me. She put the music on, and we never did a physical therapy session without the music again. We would try and communicate with her, like you said, sing song, and, put something in a sing song. And you could tell that she could attune to it, where if it was just regular vocal speech, she couldn't grab it. Then remember things. I mean, there are sequences, there's things I know she remembers if I sing to her. That's how we got through everything. So you hit so many levels with just explaining that we didn't know why it worked, but now I have a much better understanding, and you can just see it happen.
So many parents intuitively use music. I mean, if you look at our early childhood programs in schools and early childhood centers, music is most of infused in everything that we do. Mm-hmm. Because for kids, music is everything. As adults, we start going, okay, we dance to music, we listen to music, we play music. For kids, it's all of the above, all at the same time. There's no split difference for them. And I think I've shared this with you before, April, but my son is 8.5 and he's on the autism spectrum. Mm-hmm. He has ADHD. He has sensory processing needs, like all of, a host of things that a lot of our families deal with. And for him, he creeped to try to catch after a tambourine in music therapy. He took his first steps to chase after a lollipop drum. He had his first words during music. He's learned how to fly on the plane without freaking out going through security because of a music-based social story. So there's all of these different things that are getting tied in that, yes, I'm a provider of it, but I became a music therapist first and had my son later. And I've gotten to see the firsthand as a parent, the implications of the proper use of music, what you can actually achieve with it. It's fascinating. I love it.
It is. Well, and I should say, when our group meets, Jona is with the kids, and I go off in another room, and I'm speaking with parents in that. But the staff that we have with the kids, we talk after. And I didn't get to witness this myself, but we have a lot of kids that are nonverbal. But one of the staff members said, I thought that, I'm going to use the name Billy, I thought Billy was nonverbal till Jona came. And I won't say he's speaking sentences, but they have heard him just answer you in one-word sentences, and they had no idea that he even had language, that he could do that. And there's something else we used to say too, and I think it goes back to what you just said. about music, if I have this right, you said music incorporates the whole brain, both sides of the brain. Okay, so I used to use the term, again, why do you have the music? It centers her, I used to say. It used to bring her to center. Is that what you're talking about, that it brings it all together, both sides, and brings the person more present? And
it can. I mean, so there's two things that we're looking at. One is the ability for the brain to communicate within itself, and the other is grounding. So when we're looking for brain communication, our brain can move and bend. And what we have found through research is that the brain, if it cannot rebuild an area through music, music can actually develop a whole new neural pathway or a whole new area in the brain to process that information. And music is just rebuilding those avenues. So if you look at like cases like Gabriella Giffords, the congresswoman who was shot, she lost the ability to speak and was struggling. There's a wonderful video. I'll use the word wonderful. I like that it shows progress, but she was having trouble saying, turn on the light. And she couldn't get those words out. And then they turned it into this little light of mine, and out came every single one of those words, because the brain can process information different with music. So that's one. We're looking at brain connectivity and pulling out words. The other thing is grounding. So our brain locks onto music in a bunch of different ways. If you think about our bodies, our heart beats in rhythm, we walk in rhythm, we sleep in rhythm. And if one of these rhythms is off, we have arrhythmia, we have gait issues, we have breathing issues. Music is rhythm. Our body works in rhythm. So if you're listening to music, oftentimes you'll start walking in the beat of the music. Or if you're exercising, you'll start moving in the beat of the music. Down to if you're walking with friends down the street, if you pay attention, oftentimes your feet will all line up, because your brain hears the feet hitting the pavement, wants it to organize, and everyone syncs up together. That's called entrainment. And when you're working with a board certified music therapist who knows how to use that brain's process appropriately with music, we can do things like de-escalate behaviors, improve our breathing, improve pain responses, all of those things by using grounding techniques within music therapy. So you kind of get that dual use of it.
Yeah. That's it. Well, I've seen it firsthand. So then let me take you to this part. What does music therapy look like? I mean, I know what I've seen. We have a group. You come, it's this wonderful time. There's instruments, there's all this stuff. But is it always like that? Or is there different ways of doing it?
Good question. So, music therapy is very client-centered, or at least it should be. So, we can do sessions in individual settings, family settings, group settings. We try to keep our group settings smaller because you get more of that individualized attention. But really, it's custom built based upon the age of the individual, their cognitive age, their treatment plan, or their overall goals, their music preferences, their instrument preferences, and their learning style. And a good music therapist is going to take those all into account when they're working on program planning. So the group that we're doing at Camp Harkness, we do a lot of therapeutic instrument play where we're working on attention to task, direction following skills, gross motor development by, moving those hands with some good old drumsticks. We're also doing singing where we're working on singing exercises for expressive and receptive communication skills. We're doing things like passing egg shakers around to work on, social processing and teamwork, and that idea of there's other people besides me in the room. But in other settings, we may be doing things like songwriting or progressive muscle relaxation, drawing to music, songwriting. So it's very custom built. I've gone into some sessions where I've used heavy metal to work on relaxation. I've worked in foster care settings where we're building our own songs and music videos to work on processing crisis and trauma. I've gone into family settings where we're doing therapeutic instrument play, where each instrument represents a member of the family to work on, parent-child relationships and expressive communication to kind of diffuse some issues that are happening in the household. So it's really going to vary. What you are going to at least see is some form of music in a music therapy setting, but that active music making may last the entire 30, 45, 60-minute session, or may just serve as a catalyst to work on other deeper skills. So for example, working in drug and alcohol rehab with teenage boys, we might introduce a song and then break apart those lyrics and have a good old discussion / debate, because they are teenage boys, on what those lyrics mean and the implications on our life. So that 5-minute song breaks full hour of discussion, which is why we also are trained in using those counseling skills within treatment.
So listening to all that, it's really any age. There's no, oh, we're too young, too old, there, any age. And it's not just a physical disability, emotional, it can be anything that the person is working on. Like you said, it could be an addiction, it could be trauma, or it could be just a child that has ADHD. It's kind of like what we say in the network. We used to say any age, any disability, because we don't pick and choose. We just cover the wide blanket.
Well, and also not just disabilities too. There are general wellness needs that music can help. So currently, I'm the only clinician in the state trained in music therapy assisted childbirth, and one of a handful in the country. And what we do in MTACB is we work with a pregnant individual prenatally, and if they have a partner, working on assessing their music-based preferences, using research to design playlists for stages of labor. Then we accompany them into labor and delivery, whether it's home-based, hospital-based, or birth center, and we're providing comfort techniques and programming their music in the moment to work on blocking the pain receptors when they are having the surges and contractions, to help minimize pain while improving parent-child bonding. And also what research has shown is that doctors and nurses, they want to be in that room because of the music. So we're actually increasing responsiveness of the doctors wanting to come in and check on those clients. So we're getting a whole different level of care. So that's just the wellness side of things. Even I have worked with kids who are coming out of a divorce that need to process that in their life and they don't have a formal diagnosis. Or even, working with neurological needs, stroke rehabilitation for speech. I've worked with individuals with Parkinson's disease, just trying to keep the progression from slowing down, and down to even things like, dementia, where research has shown that the proper use of music therapy can regress the signs of dementia by about 18 months for about a week. And so some of the recommendations are to use music therapy prior to having an individual make a decision that impacts their care. So it's across all needs, not just, labeled developmental disabilities or intellectual disabilities. There's so many different ways to use music according to research to work on these goals and objectives.
As you say that, and I listened to that, and I forgot about the coaching, the delivery coaching and all of that. It sounds to me like music therapy must be, the field must be getting blown wide open and being more and more accepted. Is that true? And how accepted are you? Do the schools cover you? Will they cover you with that PPT?
That's a great question. So music therapy compared to other professions is the baby. Mm-hmm. We were started around World War I, World War II, working with veterans to combat things like PTSD, get them out of the hospital sooner, those sorts of things. So as a field, we have about 7,000 board certified music therapists, and that's an important factor. There are people who consider themselves music therapists, and they're not. They need to hold their credentials in the United States of MT-BC. That's Music Therapist Board Certified, which means they've done 1,200 clinical training hours, passed their proficiencies, taken their board exam, maintained their credits, and a host of other things. And some states also have licensure. So we're working on getting accepted. Not all states require licensure. Connecticut's a little bit behind the ball. We do have title protection in Connecticut, which means if you call yourself a music therapist and are not an MTBC, it's a Class B felony. So yes, we're getting there in terms of recognition. Insurance is behind. There are some states like South Carolina where insurance is reimbursing 80% of one of my colleagues' clients, and states like Indiana that have Medicaid-specific waivers for music therapy. Connecticut doesn't have that. But what we do have is a number of things, and that's one, music therapy is covered under IDEA, and that includes birth to 3 services and IEP services in your public schools. Now, There are ways to get to qualify for services no different than qualifying for speech pathology, occupational therapy, physical therapy. The difference is, though, most of our providers for birth to 3 and our special education team don't necessarily know what music therapy is, that it's covered under the law, or even the process to go, to get that. So that's where you call Infinity Music Therapy Services and go, how do I do this?
Or the Connecticut Family Support Network.
Yeah, or you
Have you ever heard of this?
We tag team. So, that's one about being accepted. 2, music therapy can be part of a child's plan in the Department of Children and Families. So Infinity is an approved vendor. So children within DCF can have that written into their RAP funds. It is covered intermittently through the Department of Developmental Services, both on the IP and the Family Support Grant. And then there are other grant programs out there that will cover music therapy. So we're getting up and running. We're getting some of, people understanding what it is, that we're not just like hippies coming in with the guitar, sitting around a fire, singing Kumbaya. Most people don't quite get it. Then they see it work in action, and they're like, wait a minute, there's something to this. So slowly but surely, we're working on it.
Well, and as I said, the network is not a stranger to helping any parent advocate for those services that should be covered under IDEA, and sometimes school systems just fail to understand that it should be. Obviously, that's one of the things we do, just like you do, Jona. So, but now let's take it up to the present. How does this look with COVID? I mean, at least I'm hoping we're kind of at the tail end of this big crisis that we've been through, but we're still in it. And just talk a little about how it's changed your work. I know it's changed what I do.
Sure. So Infinity very quickly moved over to telehealth and an online platform, which has, pros and cons to that. So we've started offering a bunch of different services to meet our clients where they're at with the technology they have. So at first, and one of the biggest things we're doing is telehealth services. And we've been doing that largely on a platform called Doxy.me. And we also use Zoom. We have some clients we've gotten really creative with, and where they have a teaching assistant in home or a caregiver, and we're calling in because they don't have access to any kind of web-based, video chat. So we're doing that. Now, what that looks like is our kids and our adults are going and filling Tupperware containers with rice, or getting pots and pans, or getting large totes so they have instruments. And if they don't have that, we are still finding ways to make it accessible. So we're doing things like screen sharing and building manipulatives that we can send to parents, and working on getting our clients' instruments ordered so they have those in home. So that's the first thing we're doing. The second thing is for our clients who cannot sit in front of a computer, we have been doing things like pre-recording videos that are specifically designed for that client in accordance with their goals and objectives. And while that's not the same benefits as music therapy, it gives them something that's a step up from doing things like watching The Wiggles or, Sesame Street, where they're up and they're moving and they might be dancing, but it's not specifically designed for them. So we're able in these videos to use the songs that they like in the correct keys, the correct tempos, working on their goals and objectives. We've also been setting up calls to reach our individuals that are in group homes to help them communicate with their families that aren't able to get to them. And we've been doing 3-way calls so we can facilitate active music making between a mom and her son, perhaps that's, living in a group home in their 20s, and work on this active music making with all of them to, keep that communication going and de-escalate some of that anxiety for that individual who is in the group home. We're also developing custom playlists. So we're interviewing our clients, we're finding out what their needs are by talking to staff and from talking to them, and we're building playlists based upon research and developing them according to what they need. So whether that's moving a physical therapy program in home and having to develop music to accompany that, we're working on sleep playlists because they're having trouble with insomnia with all the changes. So we've been doing that for them as well. So we've been getting very, very creative. The other thing that we just launched is for businesses, self-care strategies for their employees, because everyone is stretched thin. So sometimes we're going in now, via telehealth or pre-recorded videos and working directly with the staff, doing things like progressive muscle relaxation, songwriting, and other related type things to get their stress levels down so they can better work with the individuals that we're serving on the other side.
You mentioned something when you said Sesame Street. It's almost like 30 years ago, that was maybe the precursor to this, but you've taken it like much more individualized, and obviously with the science in that behind it. Because I just remember back to Sesame Street days with the young kids. They were moving, they were singing, but what you said is that there's no individuality to it. You've got it where it's tailored for them. And I mean, I think Sesame Street was one of the biggest things that, came out of what was the beginning of the technological age. I mean, the kids, instead of just watching TV, it was really using technology to teach. But this goes beyond that.
Yeah, so I mean, and Sesame Street is amazing because they really do push a lot of those early academics. But you think about, we're working with, a little kid who's having trouble with some of those bilabial sounds. So like the ba, ma, was, puz, all of those things, the songs we're going to use are going to work on that articulation, as well as the tempo of the songs is going to be perhaps slowed down, or we're going to be using descending intervals because those are processed first in the brain. So we're really fine tuning it and giving them something interactive to watch. And the nice thing about like the recorded videos, if a parent can't have the live telehealth going on right now, is they can watch them again and again and again for that repeated learning, because kids like repetition. That's why Baby Shark has been played probably 3 million times in every parent's home with a child under the age of 8.
I just like that example because I don't think anybody really disputes the value of Sesame Street as when it started and when it came into being. But this being individualized just takes it to the next level for the individual. And really, you can see that you can work on goals and make progress. So we only have a few minutes left. In all of this, do you have like one nugget of advice that you always like to give to parents?
So my big thing, and this is not for me, this is a colleague of mine who talks about this, it's the rule of 3. Parents, we often get bored really, really fast. And that's because our brains are more developed than our children's, all right? So that's one, we tend to get bored. And 2, as adults, we define music and noise very differently than a child does. A child bangs on a table, that is music to them, that might be noise to us. So looking at the rule of 3 means that if you do something, do it 3 times. And if your child does something new at the end of 3 times, you do it 3 more times. And if your child does something new at the end of those 3 times, you do it 3 more times, because it means their brain is still growing, it's still learning, it's still sucking up that information. And that might be really difficult for us as parents because we're getting bored and it might just sound noisy. But what I've seen is, I have a 1-year-old nephew, and I was doing a clapping song and some singing exercises, and I just kept singing this. And after about 3-4 minutes, he picked up his hands and clapped, and then very clearly went la, 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 which is what I was singing. And he is a year old. So it took him that time to process, but he was sitting there processing all of it that time. So keep with it. And the other big thing is just give yourself a break. And I'm preaching to the choir right now. We're always like, oh my God, I'm failing my kid. They're so far behind, especially during COVID. Like, seriously, give yourself a break and use music for your own personal health, because you can't pour from an empty cup. And many of us are trying to right now as we're working from home and managing our kids' special education programs and their therapy programs. And we're being teacher and we're being mom or dad and caregiver and cook and everything else. Just take the time, step back.
I think that's absolutely wonderful advice. We can't do it all. These are extraordinary times, and we all have to give ourselves a break. You can pick up the fight tomorrow. You can get organized again tomorrow. But we can just take a break, take a day, take a mental health day. Actually, the network always has a lot of self-help stuff. Jona, that was great advice. And if anybody's, you can find I called her Jona. Again, it's Jona.
That's okay.
I have done that since the moment
I know each other enough.
So you can find Jona with Infinity Music, or you can contact the network, or just in general, if you're interested, if you thought it might help, take a look into music therapy and see what it might be able to do for you, your family, your child. Thank you so much, Jona.
You got it. I'm just going to give a quick shout. We do offer free consultations because we all need to get the information before we make any kind of choice. So I don't know if you're posting this so we can drop the contact information on so people aren't scrambling, because there's a lot out there for music therapy. The what is music therapy and all that good stuff is, we have it on our website, www.infinitymusictherapy.com. If you want to check if a provider is credentialed, you can go on to www.cbmt.org, or you can give us a shout, because there's only like 95 of us in the state, so we'll be able to tell you if they're board certified or not, if you need help with that. And
I think that is really important. We talked about it in the beginning, but anyone could hang up the shingle, but if you're board certified, you know the standard that they're being held to.
Correct. You got it.
All right. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.